It was as if the night itself was her enemy, hiding her pursuers, keeping her in a state of constant dread. She clutched her bag close, her fingers digging into the worn leather, seeking a comfort she couldn't find. The bag was her lifeline, the only thing she had left in this nightmare. Inside, it held the remnants of her old life, a life that seemed so far away now. She held onto it like a talisman, hoping it would give her the strength to keep going. The darkness seemed to press in on her, the oppressive silence amplifying her fear. Every corner she turned, every alley she ran down, the darkness was there, waiting for her. It was a living thing, a creature of the night, and it wanted her. She could feel it closing in, could feel its cold breath on the back of her neck. But she couldn't stop. She had to keep running, had to find a way out of the nightmare that had become her reality. The footsteps followed, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored her own racing heart. Each step echoed in the narrow alley, bouncing off the brick walls and amplifying the terror that gripped her. The night was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of her own hurried breaths and the ominous footsteps that seemed to grow louder with every passing second. They were closer now, heavy and purposeful, crunching on the pavement. The sound was unmistakable, a steady rhythm that sent chills down her spine. She could almost feel the vibrations through the ground, each step a reminder of the danger that lurked just behind her. The gravel underfoot seemed to amplify the sound, making it impossible to ignore the threat that was closing in. Panic welled in Anna's throat, choking her, stealing her breath. Her mind raced, thoughts jumbled and incoherent as she struggled to maintain her composure. The darkness around her seemed to close in, suffocating and relentless, as if the night itself was conspiring against her. Her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of escape, but their shadows offered no solace, only more uncertainty. She risked a glance over her shoulder, her heart leaping into her throat. The sight of the dark silhouette, barely visible in the dim light, sent a fresh wave of terror through her. She could feel the weight of their gaze, a predatory intensity that made her skin crawl. Every instinct screamed at her to keep moving, to put as much distance between herself and the threat as possible. The shiver ran down her spine, the cold night air biting at her exposed skin. Her body trembled, a visceral reaction to the fear that coursed through her veins. She could feel the adrenaline pumping, heightening her senses and sharpening her focus. Every sound, every shadow seemed magnified, adding to the overwhelming sense of dread that threatened to consume her. She couldn't make out a face, just a silhouette swallowed by the darkness. The figure moved with a deliberate grace, each step measured and unhurried, as if they knew there was no need to rush. The anonymity of the shadow only added to the terror, the unknown threat looming larger in her mind. She could feel their presence, a malevolent force that seemed to draw closer with every heartbeat. But the menace in their pursuit was undeniable. There was a palpable sense of danger, an unspoken threat that hung heavy in the air. The figure's movements were predatory, calculated, as if they were toying with her, enjoying the chase. The fear gnawed at her, a constant reminder of the peril she was in and the desperate need to escape. Her pace quickened, her lungs burning, her legs screaming for respite. The physical exertion was taking its toll, but she couldn't afford to slow down. Every muscle in her body ached, but the fear drove her onward, pushing her to her limits. The night seemed endless, the dark streets stretching out before her like a never-ending maze, each turn offering only more uncertainty. But fear was a powerful motivator, urging her onward. It fueled her determination, giving her the strength to keep going despite the exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm her. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, a lifeline in the darkness propelling her forward. The thought of what might happen if she stopped was enough to keep her moving, each step a defiance of the terror that pursued her. The chase continued, a silent ballet of fear through the deserted streets. The city, usually bustling with life, now lay eerily quiet, its silence broken only by the sound of Anna's frantic footsteps echoing off the cold, empty buildings. The night air was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat, every corner a possible ambush. Anna's chest heaved, her breath coming in short, painful gasps. Her lungs burned with the effort, each breath a struggle as she pushed herself to keep moving. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, a relentless drumbeat of fear and desperation. Her legs felt like lead, but she couldn't afford to stop, not even for a moment. The darkness seemed to twist and writhe around her, the shadows themselves joining the pursuit. They danced and flickered in the corners of her vision, creating a nightmarish landscape that seemed to close in on her from all sides. Every alleyway, every darkened doorway seemed to hide unseen eyes watching her every move. She had to escape, had to find somewhere, someone to help. Her mind raced with possibilities, but each one seemed more hopeless than the last. She knocked on doors, pounded on windows, but no one answered. The city, once a place of refuge, now felt like a prison, its walls closing in around her. The street lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that stretched and contorted, mocking her terror. The lights, once a source of comfort, now seemed to play tricks on her mind, creating phantoms that lurked just out of sight. Each flicker of light brought a new wave of fear, a fresh surge of adrenaline that kept her moving. Each one seemed to hide the face of her pursuer, the unknown entity fueling her fear. She could feel its presence, a dark, malevolent force that seemed to be always just a step behind her. The faceless pursuer, an embodiment of her deepest fears, drove her onward, her every instinct screaming at her to run, to escape. Anna's mind raced, desperate for a solution, for an escape from this waking nightmare. She tried to think clearly, to find a way out of the labyrinth of fear and darkness that surrounded her. But the more she thought, the more trapped she felt, her options dwindling with each passing second. She knew she couldn't keep running forever, but stopping was not an option. She had to find a way to outsmart her pursuer, to turn the tables and reclaim her freedom. The night stretched on, an endless expanse of terror and uncertainty. But Anna refused to give up. She would find a way. She had to. A dead end. Anna's blood ran cold. She was trapped, the high brick wall a solid barrier against escape. Her pursuer's footsteps slowed, their heavy tread echoing in the narrow alleyway. She was cornered, with nowhere left to run. Anna's eyes darted around the alley, searching for any way out, any glimmer of hope. But there was nothing, just the cold, unforgiving brick and the encroaching darkness. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears stinging her cheeks. This was it. She was caught. Section 5. A Cry in the Night. A scream tore through the night, raw and desperate. Anna opened her eyes, her heart pounding. It wasn't her scream, it had come from the street beyond the alleyway. A distraction or another victim. The silhouette in the alleyway shifted, their attention snagged by the cry. A moment of indecision, a flicker of something other than relentless pursuit. It was a chance, however slim. Anna had to take it. Section 6. Safe haven! Adrenaline surged through Anna's veins. She didn't hesitate. As the figure moved towards the alley entrance, she darted past, her fear momentarily forgotten in the desperate need to escape. She didn't look back, didn't dare to see if she was being followed. Ahead, a beacon of light cut through the darkness. A diner, its windows glowing with warmth and life. Sanctuary. Anna ran towards it, her lungs burning, her legs screaming, but the fear that had propelled her was gone, replaced by a desperate hope. The bell above the diner door chimed as Anna burst in, the warmth and light washing over her like a physical embrace. She was safe for now. She turned, her breath catching in her throat. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the night, was her pursuer. But something was different. The figure was no longer a menacing shadow. As they stepped into the light, Anna saw not a monster, but a man. He was older than she'd expected, his face etched with concern, not malice. He looked worried. "Anna?" the man said, his voice hoarse with relief. "Thank God you're all right." He stepped towards her, his hands outstretched, but Anna flinched back, fear momentarily returning. "It's me, David," he said gently, his eyes filled with concern. "Your neighbor, David, her neighbor, the kind man who lived across the hall, always with a smile and a friendly greeting." The pieces clicked into place, confusion replacing the terror that had gripped her for so long. "David," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What's going on? Why were you chasing me?" A sad smile touched David's lips. "I got your note, Anna," he said, his voice heavy with concern. "The one you slipped under my door about the man following you. I saw you leave your apartment in such a hurry, and I knew something was wrong." Anna stared at him, her mind reeling. The note. The man she thought she'd seen following her earlier that day. She'd been so scared, so certain. But it was David who'd been chasing her, David who'd been trying to help. Understanding dawned on Anna's face, the fear melting away, replaced by a wave of shame and gratitude. She looked at David, her eyes filled with tears. "You were just trying to help," she whispered. He nodded, his expression full of compassion. The bell above the diner door chimed again, signaling the arrival of another customer. But Anna barely noticed. She was safe, thanks to the man she'd mistaken for a monster.